Would you like to hear a good story? We're going to read a story, okay? Sweeper, Part 1, Little Girls, Chapter 1, You're Going to Fix It. Pre-chapter, quote, one of these days the sky is going to break, and everything will escape, and I'll know. One of these days the mountains are going to fall into the sea, and they'll know. Civil Twilight, Letters from the Sky. It all started with a girl. She sat across the booth from me, nursing a glass of cheap red and smoking a clove cigarette. In Las Vegas, it's illegal to smoke in a bar that serves food. That's why she always does it. She quivered with the kind of pent-up rage that just begged someone to say something about the smoke. Of course, it also helped to disguise the wisps that trailed up from the corners of her eyes. Cloves worked a lot better than tobacco to mask the hint of teakwood and cardamom in the air. Actually, she smelled a lot like a Middle Eastern spice market. Why does she have to be so sexy when she's pissed? I know better than most how quick she was to anger, but how had she managed to crank it up to 11 this quickly? When I'd headed out this morning, she'd just turned on the shower. She was ready for war, and the server hadn't even brought my coffee. You're going to fix this. Lilith, first incarnation of woman, second only to the divine feminine, was not one to mince words. She took a rolled-up sheaf of printed pages and shook it at me, as if she was about to swat my snout with it. I don't have a snout. At least, not at the moment. Of course I am. When she gets that look in her eyes, it's always best to agree with her. Don't yes-steer me, Raguel. She had me there. You don't even know what I'm talking about. She took a long drag on her cigarette and affected a slight underbite in order to exhale the smoke up in front of her face. Her eyes were smoldering, but hiding them was second nature. She got pissed a lot. I'm sure it says something about me that I found her irresistible. You're right, said I. So tell me, what am I going to fix? She looked into my eyes, reminding me what a smoky glance really is. Her hands rested on the table between us. She wrung the pages into a tight tube and held it there. Sincerely, I said. I took the cigarette from her hands and placed it between my lips so that I could cover her hands with mine. Show me what has you so upset. She breathed in deeply and unrolled the pages. She kept my right hand in her left and locked onto my gaze as she slid the flattened sheets toward me. If I didn't know her so well, I might not have caught the significance of her holding on to me. She wasn't just furious. She was also grieving. This was going to be bad. I pulled this out of the RJ site just after you left. The headline seemed somehow sterile to me. 3 little girls found in grisly tableau. Apparently, the tableau was too grisly to be featured in photographs, or the scavengers from the paper hadn't been able to get a good shot yet. Either way, the picture from the web showed a swarm of police bottlenecked at the entrance to the neon graveyard. The names of the girls were well known in the valley. For the past 3 weeks, they had been the fodder for evangelicals and water cooler conversation. As I had feared, the end of their story was even more gruesome than the public conjecture had predicted. For the past 3 weeks, they had been the fodder for evangelicals and water cooler conversation. As I had feared, the end of their story was even more gruesome than the public conjecture had predicted. Sarah Johnston, Rebecca Smith, Leah Brooks, each 6 years old, each from remarkably different backgrounds, each stolen from her bed while sleeping, a Bible left behind on a freshly fluffed pillow. A serial kidnapper had been upgraded to serial killer. Lilith hadn't found them in time. The article was mercifully short on details, though I'd know them soon enough. The girls were posed in a scene constructed from discarded neon signs. Along with the scene, a message had been constructed using letters taken from several other unused neon signs. I exhaled a heavy stream of smoke across the table and followed it until my eyes met those burning across from me. What was the message? I asked. Suffer the children. A sooty red tear blazed a trail from each of her eyes and fell to the table like drops of Merlot. He's not done yet, is he? They're not safe. No, I said, and took her hands in mine. Not yet. Chapter 2. Things Get Left Behind. Things get left behind after a war. You see it all the time. Discarded mines destroy fishing boats long after the treaties are signed. Missile silos, thought long empty, are full of destructive power just waiting to be released and found by the last people you'd ever want to arm with a water gun. But that's your human legacy. Best to accept it and move on. Our war was different. We're not beings of machines. Ours is the stuff of creation. But things get left behind in a war. Someone has to clean up the mess. What can I say? It's a job. The stories are true. The nightmares are real. Man can dream up abominations far more dark and twisted than an angel could imagine. We're not built for it. Ours is the stuff of creation. What better way to prove man an unworthy and flawed creation than to take his darkest thoughts and make them manifest? It might have been a brilliant idea had it worked, but it didn't. The Creator knew there were flaws and was amused by them. We made them to be flawed at his command. Don't ask me the punchline. He didn't bother to let us in on the joke. We lost, and things got left behind. In the lonely times, the ones so quiet you want to scream just to remind yourself that you have something to say, I try to convince myself that I was left behind too. That it was a mistake, but I know better. Denial is a human thing. I'm not human. I am seraphim. Sometimes I think a state of denial would be a relief, but I'm not the sort to turn away from the things I find unpleasant. I made a deal. I accepted the job, and I'll do it with no regrets. Perhaps the decision had more power because it was my first act of free will. I don't know. I just know that when weighed against my other options, it was the best choice. I was made to be a negotiator, sometimes a go-between, sometimes an enforcer, but first and foremost, a cleaner-upper of really big messes. This is why I was made. I can't help but be good at it. Here's some perspective. I was created to clean up the messes, the mistakes of the Almighty. If you're thinking the Almighty doesn't make mistakes, that just proves how good I am at what I do. I swung the Prius V left from Maryland Parkway and headed along Charleston toward Las Vegas Boulevard and wondered what manner of thing I'd be sweeping up this time. Whatever the thing was, it was an extrovert. You don't go biblical unless you want attention. I still felt queasy, and I didn't even have all the details yet. Before I'd made the turn onto Charleston, I passed right by the park where little Rachel had been taken. It had been closed down almost immediately after a renovation. The city didn't want people messing up the pretty new features by actually using them. They said there was a homeless problem, but as I saw it, the ones who snuck into the park to sleep had been the ones walking the streets day and night looking for little girls and passing out flyers. Nothing mobilizes the weak among us like some monster preying on someone even weaker. Make no mistake, I can throw down with the best of them. The Big Seven never intimidated me. I was confident that once I found my quarry, I could do what needed doing, but children, none of us, not even Samael, can contemplate cruelty toward the innocent, and you call him the devil. I made a right off Las Vegas Boulevard and into the Neon Museum's parking lot. I hadn't been able to pick up a trail from the kidnappings, but the sort of heinous shit that went down in this place last night would leave a mark, a stain on the fabric of reality. I could use that to start hunting. I parked next to the van that Cletus Monroe, the coroner for Clark County, usually called his meat wagon. There was no holding back a chuckle. In the days before the airwaves were ruled by procedurals, the van used to have coroner printed along the side, just like it does in the real world. Now it's plastered with the letters CSI, made to look exactly like the main title theme of the television show. Leave it to Vegas to make a tourist attraction out of death. I reached into the glove compartment of the Prius and fumbled around for my credentials. They're like dog tags and a badge of office all wrapped up in a pleasingly amorphous little package. My badge is an all-access backstage pass of sorts, a little trick of the trade. The talisman is forged from the same alloy as Michael's sword, which ought to tell you that it all but screams authority. I've been told that at times it actually screams, but I've never heard it. The talisman is no more an actual badge than Michael's blade is an actual sword. Celestial stuff is cool like that. The talisman is what I need it to be. I know what you're thinking, but this is not Doctor Who's psychic paper. That's why I have the cases and the fake IDs. This is a celestial skeleton key. Sometimes literally. Sometimes it's like a titanium-plated desert eagle from the abyss shooting forth rounds of angelic fire. But yeah, I can see where one might get confused. The only time I take it off is when I'm around Lilith. It gives her the fidgets, and the last thing I want when I'm with her is a celestial cock blocker hanging like an albatross around my neck. As I mentioned, I have several flip cases I sometimes use along with the picture ID. That associates me with whatever organization will get me where I need to be. I shit you not. I have to look when I get where I'm going to make sure I know where I'm coming from and grab the right stuff. When I pulled the talisman from the glove box to check, the badge said NSA. That made sense. I wasn't surprised. The badge got the most disdain and the fewest questions. Besides, I'd never come across anyone who's actually seen one. I installed my limited edition Animaniacs sunshade between the windshield and the dash. In the parking lot with the AC off for less than 2 minutes, and already the heat radiated off the body of the car. Sure, it's black, but back when I bought it, the V was the closest thing I could find to a vegan SUV. One makes allowances for the sake of style. Okay, so that would be chapter 1 and 2. I will be back. Not sure exactly when. We'll see how the responses go. But I will be back with the continuation, moving on to chapter 3, probably chapter 3 and 4, although those chapters may be a little longer, so I may separate them. But I hope you enjoyed this very beginning first episode of the Sweeper virtual beta read, and I look forward to seeing you soon. As always, be good to yourself. Remember, your words have power, so use them wisely. Take care of your mind, body, and spirit, and I'll see you in the next video.